Hi, I'm Loren Spagnuolo, and welcome back to Empowered. And I'm going to continue my conversation with Bonnie Davis, the founder of Family Continuum. We just ended off our last conversation with craniosacral therapy and how it affects and how it can enhance us as adults with relationship. I wanted to talk about touch. And that's our first sense, as we have as babies, is touch. And we have touch deprivation, I think, in our society, and I just wanted for you to touch on that. And along with that is movement. If you could kind of tie all that together for us.
Okay. Well, like you say, touch is one of the baby's first senses that come on board. Really, how babies attach early on is through their senses. So when a baby first comes out, they make eye contact with their mother. And the mother will touch the baby, and help the baby to feel themselves. Babies have had touch when they're in the womb. As the uterus gets smaller, the baby gets bigger, and they have a lot of touch and containment in there. So when the baby comes out, what they're expecting is to be held and touched and nurtured, and not be put down, in all kinds of containers. But they're expecting to be really close to our heart, and to be feeling our heartbeat. There's so many benefits to having your baby close skin to skin when they first come out, and give them massage and give them that sense of being in their own bodies, and having that helps them to feel themselves.
If you're not having a home birth with a doula and a midwife who might sort of recognize that way of bringing in a new baby, does the hospital system have that awareness?
The hospital system is now changing a lot, and
Okay.
they're recognizing the benefits of skin to skin. For example, right after birth, there's that magical hour right after birth where hopefully the baby comes onto your belly and is left there undisturbed. And the benefits of skin to skin, there's evidence-based research that says that there is tons and tons of benefits to skin. Not only does it help to regulate the baby's body temperature, but it helps their physiology, it helps with their digestion. Babies who are worn skin to skin gain weight a lot faster, not to mention all those hormones that get released in the mom and the baby, like oxytocin, that are love hormones, basically, that help them to feel good.
Right. What's really fascinating is when we make all these discoveries, they're really simple.
Yeah.
And it seems like we've moved away from the simplicity of life. And we think that everything needs to be something, more difficult than it needs to be. And life is full of challenges, certainly. But when you hear things like that, it's like, wow. I mean, it sounds so profound, but it's so simple.
It is so simple.
Yeah.
And I think in cultures that are more intact, in cultures that are more bonded, for example, like the Balinese culture, where babies are worn, pretty much all the time for 6 months, and there's a tremendous amount of connection and bonding. They just do that instinctively, They do that from an intuitive place, and they do that because they have a sense of community. And that's really what I want to support in our culture, is to have more of a sense of contact and connection, and for families to get the support that they need so that they can have that bond and connection with each other.
Right. When it comes to digital technology, you mentioned earlier, in our culture is becoming, it seems like it's becoming much more accelerated at speeds that it's like very unnatural. And what do you think families could do? I mean, I guess the first thing is to be aware of that. But it's almost difficult to want to be able to do that, but they might not have the means to do those things. They don't have access to them. They don't have knowledge. But what could people do?
That's a good question. Because I think of our dependence on phones, for example. I see a lot of parents on their phones a lot. One thing that I really support with families is to take what I call a family pause, where there is no technology.
Right.
So put your phone down, put your computer down, and actually take 10 minutes when you come home from work, for example, to all sit down on the living room floor, or all flop onto the bed and have a big family pause moment where there's no technology and where there's real presence and connection, and then go and make dinner or do whatever, but there's that need to, when you come together like a family, if you've been apart all day and kids have been at school, to take a moment with each other, to take a pause And I've seen just that one thing change the dynamics in families that are busy.
I wanted to end off this segment by another study that I actually saw on your website on Family Continuum, which is the fourth trimester and brain development, and how we could, if you could just share a little bit about that and how we could all learn from that.
Okay. So the fourth trimester is what I refer to as those few months after birth. So we've got 3 trimesters on the inside, and then the fourth trimester is on the outside. So we are compared to all other mammalian species, we are born with the 25% of our adult brain size, whereas all other mammals are born with 60 to 90%. So most of the other mammals do their growing on the inside, whereas we come out with 25% and we do most of our growing on the outside, which is why what happens to us early on is so, so important, which is why what happens to a baby early on, how they're born, how they come into the world is so, so important. So I like to think of it as, like the kangaroo that has that little pouch where the little Joey kangaroo goes in. Babies need that. They need to have as close to womb-like surroundings, environment when they come out as what was inside the womb. So what was it like in the womb? It was dark. The sounds were muffled. There was holding. They got constant nourishment. There wasn't a lot of stimulation in terms of outside environment. So if we can recreate that environment in the first few months with babies when they come to the outside, that will help them because it'll be familiar. It's what their womb was the first home, and then they come to their second home, and if we can make it much like their first home, will be what helps them to feel safe and secure. And so I talk about the fourth trimester with parents as being a really important time where you stay at home and you go skin to skin with your baby and you hang out in bed and you learn about each other and you come into relationship and you make eye contact and you breastfeed your baby and you just have that family unit be slowed down. Because a part of that in our culture is the speeding up of our culture. But when our babies are born, they're expecting to have the same thing happen that happened during hunter-gatherer times thousands of years ago. They're expecting things to be really slow because their nervous system is really slow. They're expecting just lots of cuddles and downtime and for things to go at what I call a baby's pace, which is slowed down.
Right. I think what you offer with the workshops that you offer are probably incredibly informative for new parents, but also allowing the individual, so that there's a learning for everyone that makes them think about their own life, like, separate from them having a child, but from them as, what have I been carrying forward in my life? Right. And I think this is the real beauty of what you do. It's very balanced, I find. And I just really want to thank you for dedicating your life to this work because, you're making one individual or, life easier, but it just, it moves on to the whole community now, doesn't it? And this is what I really appreciate.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that all the listeners today found this conversation interesting. If you have any questions, you can contact Bonnie at familycontinuum.com. Is that correct?
Yep.
And as we move forward with Empowered, there's so many things to explore about health. What sorts of foods we put in our body, how we deal with our thoughts, the mind. What forms of exercise. So we're going to be exploring that throughout the series as we go along. And I started off here today because it really is the root of where we all come from, the foundation. And I think that to have that understanding, it's the most fantastic way to move forward with your life. And thank you again for joining me today on Empowered, and I wish you a beautiful day. Thank you.